It was near sundown when the wind began to pick up across the Llano Estacado, that wide, God-forsaken stretch of land that made a man question why the hell he ever came west in the first place. The air was full of dust and the scent of mesquite smoke, and the sky was bleeding itself out in orange and violet. Somewhere between the low hills and the horizon, a lone cowboy rode slow, tired, and half-drunk on his own silence. His name was Eli Turner, and he'd been trailing cattle, trouble, and ghosts for near 10 years. His horse, a chestnut mare named Clara, had been his only friend that whole while, sleek, smart, and mean enough to bite a rattler in half. Together they'd outrun bandits, storms, and one or two bad decisions. But that evening, when Eli stopped at a dry creek bed to make camp, Clara took off. He'd just unsaddled her, loosening the girth strap and patting her side. She flicked her ears, gave him one long look, like she was tired of his company, and then bolted straight into the canyon scrub. Eli shouted, ran a few steps after her, but she was gone before the echo of his boots faded. The land swallowed her whole. For a long minute he just stood there, hat in hand, jaw tight. "Well," he muttered, "ain't that just about right?" He spent the night on the cold ground, back against a boulder, watching the fire crackle low. Coyotes sang somewhere far off, and every time they did, he thought maybe he heard the distant thud of hooves. But it was just the desert talking. By morning, his canteen was near empty, and the heat was already climbing. Walking out of that canyon was gonna be hell. Eli packed up what he could carry and started trudging toward the north ridge. His boots bit into the sand. By noon he was cursing every saint he knew and a few he didn't. The sun was a burning coin above his head, and every breath felt like swallowing ash. He kept muttering to himself, half crazy, "Clara, you fool of a horse. What did you run for? I never did you wrong." He didn't make it far that day, collapsed near a patch of sagebrush when the heat hit hardest. He dreamed then, or thought he did, of the sound of hooves again. But this time, when he opened his eyes, it wasn't a dream. There she was, Clara, standing not 30 paces away. Only this time, there was someone on her back. Eli blinked, shielding his eyes. The rider was a woman, Apache, by the look of her dress and the dark braid hanging over one shoulder. She sat tall and calm in the saddle, the rifle slung across her lap like she was born with it there. Her eyes, black and bright as obsidian, looked down at him without fear. For a long while, neither spoke. The desert had a way of making silence feel like a living thing between folks. Finally, Eli pushed himself to his feet, brushing dust from his shirt. "Ma'am," he said, voice hoarse. "That's my horse you're sittin' on." The woman tilted her head, eyes unreadable. Then she slid off Clara's back in one fluid motion, landing light on her moccasins. She didn't draw her gun or her knife. She just stood there, hand resting easy on the mare's neck. "She come to my camp," the woman said quietly, her accent thick but her English clear. "No brand on her. No saddle. I give her water. She stay. She's branded," Eli said, a little sharper than he meant to. "Under the mane. Circled T. My brand." The woman nodded once, like that settled it. She stepped aside, and Eli took the reins, feeling half relieved, half uneasy. He swung himself into the saddle, the leather creaking. "Much obliged, ma'am. You far from your people?" The woman's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "My people are gone," she said simply. "Soldiers came last winter. Only me now." Eli swallowed hard. "Sorry to hear that." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the small pouch on her belt and pulled out a piece of rawhide, handing it to him. On it was carved a small symbol, a spiral sun. "You keep," she said. "For safe trail." He took it without thinking. "You got a name?" he asked. "Nita," she replied. "Well, Nita, I reckon I owe you a drink of water and maybe a meal. Camp's not far." He gestured to the shade of a distant rock outcrop. She hesitated, then nodded. Together they walked Clara back toward Eli's small fire pit. He cooked what little he had left, beans, dry and half burned, and passed her the tin plate. She ate slow, eyes watching the horizon. There was something in the air that day, a stillness that felt like it was waiting for trouble. When the first shot rang out, it came from the north ridge. Eli ducked instinctively, dragging Nita down beside him. The bullet whined off the rocks where she'd been sitting. A second shot followed, then a third. Dust kicked up near the fire. "Bandits," Eli hissed. Saw the smoke. Nita was already reaching for her rifle. "How many?" He peered around the rock. "3, maybe 4. One's got a mule with him." "They want horse," she said flatly. "Yeah," Eli muttered. "They want everything." The two of them held their ground behind the rocks. Eli fired once, missing wide. The bandits hollered, spreading out. The sun blazed down, and the gunpowder stung the air. Nita moved like a shadow, calm and sure, waiting for the right moment. When one of the riders broke cover, she took him clean through the shoulder. He fell hard, screaming. Eli glanced over at her, surprised. "You're a damn good shot." She didn't answer, just reloaded, smooth as breath. The fight dragged on for near 20 minutes, but in the end, the bandits broke and fled, one dragging the wounded man across the ridge. Eli stood there panting, sweat running into his beard. "Guess they won't be comin' back soon." Nita wiped the barrel of her rifle with a strip of cloth. "They will. Men like that always come back." He couldn't argue that. The West had a way of turning men into ghosts that just kept riding. They stayed together that night, neither sleeping much. Around the fire, Eli told her about Texas, about cattle drives and saloons and all the mistakes that had carved lines into his face. She told him a little about the mountains where she was born, where the rivers ran clear and her people hunted before the white soldiers came. When she spoke of them, her voice went quiet, like she was talking to spirits. At dawn, she saddled Clara herself. Eli watched her, unsure what to say. "You got somewhere to go?" he asked. "North," she said. "To the Black Mesa. Maybe find others." He nodded slowly. "I could ride with you a ways. Safer that way." She looked at him for a long time, then gave a small smile, just a flicker. "You talk too much," she said. "But you can come." So they rode together, side by side across the plains. Days passed. They found water at a shallow spring, food in what game they could catch. The land began to rise into red cliffs and scattered juniper. It was rough country, but beautiful in the way that makes a man feel both small and alive. They came upon the ruins of an old Spanish mission one evening, walls half crumbled, the bell tower leaning like it had given up praying. They made camp there. Nita walked among the stones, tracing the faded crosses carved into the walls. "Your people build many things," she said. "Then leave them to die." Eli shrugged. "That's about right. We move on, always looking for better land. Never find it." That night, as the wind moved through the empty chapel, Eli dreamed again. In his dream, he saw Nita riding Clara across a field of stars, her braid flowing behind her, her face calm. When he woke, she was gone. At first, he thought maybe she'd gone to fetch water. But the camp was empty. Her rifle, her pack, gone too. Only the small carved sun she'd given him lay beside his bedroll. Eli sat there for a long time, holding it in his hand. The morning was cool, the sky gray and full of promise. He thought of calling after her, but something told him she was meant to go. Some souls are just passing through, like tumbleweeds on a long trail. He saddled Clara and turned her south, back toward the plains. The wind carried the faint scent of sage and smoke. As he rode, he found himself talking to the mare. "Guess she was right, girl. I do talk too much." Clara flicked her ears, and for a moment, he swore she almost smiled. Weeks later, in the town of Silver Bend, Eli heard a story told over whiskey in the saloon. They said a woman, Apache by her dress, beautiful as the desert at dusk, had been seen near the Black Mesa. Said she rode a stolen army horse and carried a silver cross she took from a dying preacher. Said she'd freed a handful of captives from a band of rustlers, then vanished into the mountains again. Eli just listened, saying nothing. When they asked if he'd ever seen her, he smiled into his drink and said, "Can't say as I have." But when he rode out the next morning, he touched the small rawhide sun hanging from his saddle, and the wind seemed to whisper her name. The west kept rolling on, dust and gun smoke and dreams that didn't last. But every now and then, when the night was quiet and the coyotes far off, Eli Turner would think he heard another horse keeping pace beside him, hooves soft, steady, and sure. And though he never saw her again, he knew somewhere out there, under the same endless sky, the Apache woman was still riding, free as the wind that carried her away.